The alarm screaming through Tidewatch Station meant one of three things: hull breach, solar flare, or something big had just appeared where it should not be. Dr. Raymond Cole dropped his sample tray and ran toward the observation deck, his boots clanging against metal floors. Other scientists scattered in the opposite direction, heading for emergency pods. Raymond ran toward the danger instead of away from it. That difference defined his entire career. The thing clinging to the landing platform was massive. White scales caught the light from Cerulean Deep's twin suns, creating patterns that hurt to look at directly. Wings spread across 50 meters of reinforced steel, torn membranes dripping something that hissed when it hit the deck. Security teams surrounded the creature with weapons raised, but nobody fired. The dragon had not moved since landing. It simply hung there, breathing in ragged gasps that fogged the observation windows. Raymond pushed through the crowd of personnel. Commander Patricia Reeves grabbed his arm, her grip tight enough to bruise. "Cole, stay back. We don't know if it's hostile." "Look at it," Raymond said, pulling free. "That's not an attack posture. That's exhaustion." He approached the exterior airlock controls. Behind him, Reeves cursed but did not stop him. The outer door opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Raymond stepped onto the platform, hands visible and empty. The dragon's head lifted slightly. Milky white eyes stared in his general direction but did not focus. The creature was blind. "Easy," Raymond said, keeping his voice low and calm. "Nobody's going to hurt you. Can you understand me?" The dragon made a sound like rocks grinding together. A translator device clipped to Raymond's belt crackled to life, converting the sound into words. "Human, need human, please." Raymond took 3 more steps forward. The dragon was young, he realized. Barely adult by dragon standards, with scales that had not yet developed the thick layering of age. Fresh scars marked her flanks where she had flown through debris fields or scraped against station walls during landing. She had pushed herself far beyond normal limits to get here. "I'm human," Raymond said. "My name is Raymond Cole. What do you need?" "My father," the dragon said through the translator. Her voice carried harmonics that the device could not quite capture. Layers of grief and desperation that needed no translation. "He's dying. Turning to stone. They say nothing can save him. But I heard stories about humans. You don't give up. Even when everyone else does, please." Raymond gestured for a medical team to approach slowly. "Tell me what happened. Start from the beginning." The dragon's name was Ashara, she explained haltingly, pausing when pain or exhaustion overwhelmed her. Her father, Thornscale, had investigated strange reports from the abyssal trenches of their homeworld. When he returned, alien barnacles covered his scales. Not dozens or hundreds, thousands, then tens of thousands, then millions spreading across his entire body like a living shell. "The healers tried everything," Ashara said. "Fire to burn them off, acid to dissolve them, cutting them away. But they grew back faster. And then my father started changing. His scales turned hard, gray like stone. The barnacles kept spreading, kept growing, and he stopped moving. Stopped speaking. The council says he's gone. They want to seal the cavern and tomb him forever. But I can hear his heart. It still beats." Raymond felt Lucy Bennett arrive beside him. His research assistant carried a medical scanner and started taking readings of the dragon without being asked. That was why Raymond trusted her. She acted instead of waiting for permission. "How can you hear his heart?" Raymond asked gently. "You're blind. I navigate by sound," Ashara explained. "By heat, by the way air moves around things. I can hear his heartbeat through the stone shell. Once every minute now. It was once every 30 seconds when I left. He's fading, and I can't save him alone. The council won't listen to me. They say I'm being foolish, that I can't accept the inevitable. But humans don't accept the inevitable. I've heard the stories. The human who climbed into a reactor to save his crew. The human who walked across a radioactive zone to deliver medicine. The humans who rebuilt their entire world after nearly destroying it. You try even when it's impossible. That's what I need. Someone who will try." Lucy looked at Raymond and nodded once. Her scanner showed stress fractures in the dragon's wings, severe dehydration and muscle damage from flying too far without rest. But nothing immediately life-threatening. Ashara had nearly killed herself getting here, but she would survive. The question was whether her father would. "Commander Reeves," Raymond called without turning around. "We need medical supplies, portable lab equipment, and a transport capable of atmospheric entry on a high-gravity world. And I need authorization to leave the station. Absolutely not, Reeves said, stepping onto the platform. Cole, we can't get involved in dragon internal affairs. The political implications alone— A sentient being is dying, Raymond interrupted. Politics can wait. How much time do we have? He directed the last question to Ashara. 72 hours, the dragon said. Then the council seals the cavern permanently. With my father inside. Raymond looked at Lucy. She was already mentally cataloging what equipment they would need. He looked at Ashara, this young dragon who had flown across star systems on hope alone. He looked at Reeves, who was already reaching for her communicator despite her protests. We have 72 hours to do something impossible, Raymond said. Better get started. Reeves sighed the sigh of someone who knew she was about to approve something that would generate mountains of paperwork. I'll have a ship ready in 2 hours. But Cole, if this goes wrong, if there are political consequences, you're taking full responsibility. Wouldn't have it any other way, Raymond said. He turned back to Ashara. The dragon had lowered her head to the deck, finally allowing exhaustion to take over now that she had found what she came for. Someone who would try. Raymond pulled up images on his datapad, files Ashara had managed to capture before losing her sight. The barnacles covering Thornscale were not randomly placed. They formed patterns, geometric arrangements that looked almost deliberate. Lucy leaned over his shoulder and whistled softly. That's not a natural infestation. No, Raymond agreed. It's something much stranger, and we have 3 days to figure out what. Behind them, Tidewatch Station hummed with sudden activity. Crew members loaded equipment, Reeves argued with bureaucrats over long-range communication. Ashara slept the sleep of someone who had carried hope across the galaxy and finally, found someone willing to carry it with her. Raymond studied the images of Thornscale, the dragon encased in living stone. Everyone else had declared this impossible. That meant it was exactly the kind of problem humans were meant to solve. He smiled despite the enormity of the task ahead. Time to prove the story's true. Scorched Haven lived up to its name. Heat radiated from crystalline cliffs that jutted into a sky the color of old bruises. Raymond felt sweat soaking through his protective suit before they even landed. The transport settled onto a plateau overlooking a massive cavern entrance, and through the shimmering air he saw them. Dragons. Dozens of them, circling overhead or perched on cliff edges, watching with eyes that gleamed like polished metal. Ashara was first out of the transport, moving with confidence despite her blindness. She navigated by the echoes of her own breathing, by the heat signatures of rocks and living things, by senses Raymond could barely imagine. Lucy followed with equipment cases and Raymond brought up the rear, very aware of how small and soft humans looked compared to the creatures surrounding them. They don't look happy to see us, Lucy muttered. Would you be? Raymond replied. Strangers showing up to help with a problem you've already declared unsolvable. It's insulting to their pride. A dragon landed in front of them with enough force to crack the stone beneath its claws. Its scales were silver gray, darkening to black at the edges. Age showed in the thick layering of its hide and the scars that crisscrossed its body. When it spoke, the translator rendered its voice as cold and formal. I am High Archon Silverwing of the Singing Cliffs Council. You are the humans Ashara brought here against our explicit instructions. Dr. Raymond Cole, Raymond said, meeting the dragon's gaze. Marine biologist. This is Lucy Bennett, my research assistant. We're here to examine Thornscale's condition. Thornscale is beyond examination. The decision has been made. In 72 hours, we seal the cavern. This is dragon business, human. You should not have come. Ashara stepped between them, her blind eyes somehow finding her exact position despite not seeing either of them. The council declared my father dead. I know he's not. His heart still beats. If you won't save him, I'll find someone who will. You bring shame to our kind, Silverwing said. But there was something in his voice that was not quite anger, pain maybe, or regret. Accepting help from outsiders shows weakness. Watching someone die when they could be saved shows cowardice, Raymond said quietly. The dragons watching from the cliffs shifted position, a ripple of movement that could have been threat or interest. You have 72 hours to prove me wrong. Let me examine him. If I can't find a solution, I'll leave. You lose nothing by letting me try. Silverwing stared at Raymond for a long moment. Then his gaze shifted to Ashara, and something in his expression softened. Very well. 72 hours. But know this, human. When you fail, the shame falls on you. Ashara has suffered enough. The cavern entrance was larger than Raymond expected. They descended through passages that glowed with bioluminescent crystals, following Ashara's confident navigation. Other dragons watched from side chambers, silent witnesses to the humans walking deeper into their sacred space. The air grew colder as they descended, and Raymond realized why. They were trying to slow the process, using temperature to delay the inevitable. Then they entered the main chamber, and Raymond stopped walking. Lucy gasped beside him. Thornscale was not just covered in barnacles. He had become a landscape. The dragon's body stretched across the cavern floor, but individual features were almost impossible to distinguish. Millions of crystalline barnacles covered every surface, pulsing with faint blue-green light. They grew in patterns that formed spirals and geometric shapes, connected by threads so fine they were nearly invisible. The entire mass breathed slowly, expanding and contracting like a single massive lung. "My father is under there," Ashara said softly. "Can you hear him?" Raymond activated his medical scanner. The readings were incredible. Life signs registered, but they were strange. Metabolic processes operating at near zero levels, body temperature barely above ambient, and there, buried beneath layers of stone and shell, a heartbeat. Slow, steady, persistent. "He's alive," Raymond confirmed. "Lucy, start mapping the barnacle structure. I want to know how they're connected." They worked for hours. Dragons watched from the cavern entrance but did not interfere. Raymond took samples, scans, measurements. Lucy deployed sensor nets across the barnacle colony, tracking energy flows and chemical exchanges. The data they gathered was unlike anything in their databases. "Raymond, look at this," Lucy called. She projected a holographic image showing the barnacle's cellular structure. "They're silicon-based, not carbon. The cellular composition is more like crystal than organic tissue." Raymond studied the projection. Silicon-based life was rare but not unknown. It required different conditions than carbon-based organisms, different energy sources, different environmental tolerances. He pulled up a comparison scan of Thornscale's tissue underneath the shell. Carbon-based, completely incompatible with the barnacles covering him. "They're not parasites," Raymond said slowly, understanding dawning. "They're trying to establish symbiosis with an incompatible host. Look at these connection points. They're trying to interface with Thornscale's nervous system, but the biochemistry is all wrong. They're failing to adapt, and it's killing both of them." "Both?" Lucy asked. "The barnacles are dying too. Slowly. They induced this hibernation state trying to preserve their host, but Thornscale's body is rejecting them at a cellular level. It's a feedback loop. The more they try to connect, the deeper he goes into stasis. The deeper he goes, the harder they try to connect. Eventually, his organs will fail under the strain." Ashara approached, her head tilted in the listening posture she used when concentrating. "Can you save him?" Raymond looked at the massive colony covering Thornscale. Every expert the dragons had consulted said removal was impossible. The barnacles and the dragon were too interconnected. Removing one would kill both, but those experts had been thinking about it wrong. They saw a parasite that needed to be destroyed. Raymond saw two victims of an impossible situation. The barnacles did not want to kill Thornscale. They were just as trapped as he was, drowning in an environment their biology could not process. "Maybe," Raymond said, "but not by killing the barnacles. We need to talk to them." "Talk to them?" Silverwing had entered the chamber, his voice sharp with disbelief. "They're mindless organisms, are they?" Raymond pointed to the geometric patterns in the colony's structure. "Look at that organization. That's not random growth. That's coordinated behavior." "Lucy, boost the resolution on the sensor net. I want to see energy flows between individual barnacles." Lucy worked quickly. The holographic display shifted, showing millions of tiny connections between barnacles. Energy pulses traveled through the network in waves, complex patterns that looked almost like neural activity. "It's a distributed intelligence," Lucy breathed. "Each barnacle is like a neuron. Together they form a single consciousness spread across millions of individual organisms." Ashara moved closer to the colony, pressing her head against the crystalline surface. She hummed, a low vibration that resonated through the chamber. The barnacles responded, their bioluminescence pulsing in rhythm with her sound. "They're singing," Ashara said, wonder in her voice. "I've been hearing it for weeks, but I did not understand." "They're not silent. They're trying to communicate through crystal resonance. They're scared." Raymond pulled up schematics on his data pad, designing modifications to their communication equipment. If they're intelligent, they can understand their situation. They can cooperate. We don't need to remove them by force. We need to negotiate their departure. Silverwing stepped closer, studying the patterns of light flowing through the colony. You truly believe you can communicate with this thing? We have 72 hours to try, Raymond said. And trying is what humans do best. He looked at Thornscale's stone-covered form, at the millions of barnacles trapped in their own failed symbiosis, at Ashara who had crossed the galaxy on hope alone. Everyone said this was impossible. That just meant nobody had found the right approach yet. Raymond smiled and got to work. They had a conversation to start with something that did not speak any known language, just another day of doing the impossible. The modified resonance device looked like someone had welded together a music synthesizer, a geological scanner, and a prayer. Lucy connected the final power coupling, while Raymond calibrated frequency patterns based on Ashara's echolocation data. Around them, dragons gathered in increasing numbers. Word had spread that the humans were attempting something either brilliant or insane. Host bet on insane. Theoretical question, Lucy said, tightening a bolt. What happens if we're wrong and this thing isn't intelligent? What if we're trying to negotiate with the equivalent of moss? Then we're no worse off than before, Raymond replied. But look at those patterns again. Random organisms don't create geometric precision. Something is organizing this colony. Something is making decisions. Ashara stood beside Thornscale's stone-covered form, her head pressed against the crystalline surface. She had been there for hours, listening to the song only she could hear. When she spoke, her voice was soft but certain. They're afraid. I can feel it in the resonance. They know something is wrong. They know they're dying. Raymond activated the device. It hummed to life, generating vibrations that made the cavern walls ring like bells. The sound was beyond human hearing range, but Raymond felt it in his bones. The barnacles reacted immediately. Their bioluminescence flared bright, pulsing in rapid patterns that almost looked like panic. Easy, Raymond said, though he did not know if they could understand tone. We're not here to hurt you. We want to help. Can you understand me? For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the light patterns changed, slower, more deliberate. The colony was responding, modulating its own bioluminescence in a rhythm that matched the device's vibrations. They heard us, Lucy whispered. Ashara, can you interpret the resonance? Raymond asked. Tell me what they're saying. Ashara tilted her head, her blind eyes closed in concentration. Confusion. They don't understand what we are. They're asking if we're more like them or more like the big one. She meant Thornscale. They're very young, I think. Or very isolated. They don't know about other types of life. Raymond adjusted the resonance device, forming words into vibration patterns. This was more art than science, translating concepts into a language that was not truly language at all. We are different from the big one, but we want to help him. And you. You're both in danger. The colony's response came in waves of light and resonance. Ashara translated haltingly, struggling to convert alien thought patterns into words. They say they know. They came from deep places, dark places. They've been sleeping for so long they don't remember when they began. The big one woke them up. They tried to connect, to become one with him like they're supposed to. But something is wrong. The connection hurts. They can't let go and they can't complete the bond. They're trapped. Where did you come from? Raymond asked. What were you supposed to connect with? The answer came slowly. The colony accessing memories that might be millions of years old. Ashara's voice took on a distant quality as she relayed what she heard. A world of crystal. Living stone. Forests that sing to stars. They were made to grow there, to spread consciousness through mineral structures. But that world ended. They don't know how or why. They went to sleep in deep places waiting for something compatible. But the big one is not compatible. They realize this now. Too late. Lucy looked at Raymond with wide eyes. They're not native to this world. They're refugees from a dead civilization, probably spread as seeds across multiple planets as a survival mechanism. And Thornscale accidentally triggered their activation sequence, Raymond finished. They're trying to fulfill their biological programming with a host that's completely wrong for them. Silverwing pushed forward from the watching crowd. If they know they're incompatible, tell them to release him. Tell them to let go. Raymond transmitted the request. The colony's response was immediate and tinged with something that felt like despair. even through the translation. Ashara's voice shook as she spoke. They can't. They've invested too much energy in the connection. If they release him now, they'll fragment and die. They need host energy to maintain cohesion. Without it, they'll break apart into millions of individual organisms, each one too small to survive alone. Then they're willing to kill him to save themselves, Silverwing growled. No, Ashara said sharply. They don't want to hurt anyone. They're just scared. They're dying too. Can't you understand that? They're victims just like my father. Raymond's mind raced through possibilities. The colony needed energy and compatible substrate. Thornscale needed them removed. Two problems that seemed to cancel each other out, unless there was a third option nobody had considered yet. Lucy, those silicon gel matrices we use for crystal growth in the lab, how fast could we synthesize larger quantities? Lucy pulled up specifications on her datapad. Depends on how much you need, why? The colony needs a compatible host, something silicon-based they can actually bond with. What if we provide an artificial substrate? Transfer them from Thornscale to something that matches their biology. That's theoretically possible, Lucy said slowly, working through the calculations. But the logistics are insane. We'd need to synthesize enough gel matrix to accommodate millions of organisms, transfer them while maintaining colony cohesion, and do it all without killing either the colony or Thornscale in the process. Can it be done? Raymond asked. I don't know. Maybe. The margin for error is microscopic. That's better odds than Thornscale has now. Ashara explained the concept to the colony. Ask if they're willing to try. Ashara communicated through resonance, her whole body vibrating with the effort. The colony responded with patterns that grew increasingly complex. Hope, maybe, or desperation. Ashara translated. They want to know if we're certain. If the new substrate will support them. They say they've already failed once. They can't survive another mistake. Nothing is certain, Raymond said honestly. But staying where they are means death. For them in Thornscale, this gives everyone a chance to live. The colony went dark for several long seconds. When the lights returned, they pulsed in a steady rhythm that needed no translation. Agreement. They would trust the humans. They would try. Silverwing stared at Raymond with something that might have been respect. You're actually going to attempt this. You're going to try to save both of them. That was always the plan, Raymond said. We didn't come here to choose who lives. We came to make sure everyone does. And if you fail? Silverwing asked. If this kills Thornscale, if it releases the colony to spread across our world, if your solution becomes a greater disaster than the original problem. Raymond met the dragon's gaze without flinching. Then I take full responsibility. But we won't fail. We can't because giving up isn't an option. He turned to Lucy. Contact Commander Reeves. Tell her we need a full synthesis lab transported here immediately. Medical nanites, silicon gel matrices, everything we've got. And tell her we're going to need volunteers. This is going to take more hands than we have. Human volunteers or dragon volunteers? Lucy asked. Both, Raymond said. This is too big for any one species. Ashara pressed her head against her father's stone shell. She whispered something in dragon speech, too soft for the translator to catch. Raymond knew what she was saying anyway. Hold on, help is coming. Just hold on a little longer. Around the cavern, dragons looked at each other with uncertainty. Humans were asking them to help save what they had declared unsavable, to work alongside aliens they barely knew, to trust in methods that defied their understanding. One young dragon stepped forward, then another, then more. Silverwing watched his people volunteer to help humans save one of their own. And something in his expression shifted. Pride, maybe. Or the beginnings of understanding. Raymond got to work. They had 48 hours remaining and an impossible procedure to plan. The colony pulsed with cautious hope beneath his feet. Thornscale's heartbeat echoed through the stone, growing slower but still fighting. Everyone said this was impossible. Raymond smiled. Those were his favorite kind of problems. The cavern had transformed into something between a surgical theater and a disaster response center. Equipment filled every available space. Dragon volunteers practiced handling delicate instruments with claws designed for fighting, not precision work. Commander Reeves had arrived with 3 more transports full of supplies and a team of human medics who looked terrified and excited in equal measure. 24 hours remained. Raymond studied the holographic map of Thornscale's body one more time. They had identified 7 neural clusters within the colony. Nodes where intelligence concentrated and coordinated the whole. These had to be transferred last, maintaining perfect connection throughout the procedure. If any cluster lost cohesion, the entire colony would fragment. It's like trying to move a brain while it's still thinking, Lucy said, voicing the thought they all shared. Exactly like that, Raymond agreed, which is why we're starting from the tail and working forward. Give the neural clusters time to adapt. Let them feel the new substrate working. Build trust. Ashara had not left her father's side in 36 hours. She rested her head against the stone shell, whispering to him in dragon speech, telling him stories of his own bravery to remind him why living mattered. Raymond could see exhaustion in every line of her body, but she refused to rest, not until her father was safe. Silverwing approached, his massive form moving carefully through the human equipment. The volunteers are ready. They're frightened but ready. None of them truly believe this will work. Do you? Raymond asked. The dragon was quiet for a moment. I believe you will try with everything you have. For humans, perhaps that is the same thing as belief. Raymond checked his chronometer. We start in 1 hour. Is there any dragon ritual we should observe? Any prayer or ceremony? Dragons do not pray, Silverwing said. We act or we do not act. But perhaps today we learn something new. Several of the younger ones have been asking the humans about their gods. What did the humans tell them? The gods help those who help themselves. I find I like this philosophy. The hour passed too quickly. Raymond gathered everyone in a circle around Thornscale's stone-covered form. Humans and dragons together. The smallest and largest gathered for a common purpose. He looked at their faces, seeing determination mixed with fear. Everyone knows their role, Raymond said. We proceed slowly, methodically, maintaining communication with the colony at every step. If anything goes wrong, if the colony shows distress, we stop and reassess. The goal is to save everyone. Not quickly, not dramatically. Just successfully. He activated the resonance device. The colony pulsed with light, acknowledging. Ashara translated their message. They're ready. They trust you. Please don't let them die. We won't, Raymond promised, hoping desperately he could keep it. They began at Thornscale's tail, the furthest point from his heart and brain. Raymond and a dragon volunteer named Cinder worked together, carefully coaxing barnacles onto sheets of silicon gel matrix. The gel had been formulated to match the colony's chemical signature as closely as possible. When the first barnacles made contact, they flared with light. Connection established. The gel was working, but working slowly. Each barnacle had to be individually transferred, maintaining contact with its neighbors through crystalline threads finer than human hair. Break too many connections and that section of the colony would lose cohesion. Rush the process and the colony would panic. They had to maintain perfect balance between speed and caution. 2 hours into the procedure, disaster almost struck. A section of colony near Thornscale's hindquarters suddenly tried to burrow deeper into the stone shell instead of transferring to the gel. Thornscale's heart rate spiked dangerously. Alarms shrieked across medical monitors. He's waking up, Lucy shouted. If he thrashes now, we lose everything. Raymond grabbed the resonance device and sent a pulse of pure calm toward the colony. Stop, you're hurting him. You're hurting yourself. Trust the process. Trust us. Ashara pressed herself against her father's head, speaking directly to his subconscious in the subsonic rumble that dragons used for deep communication. Father, stay calm. Stay still. Help is here. I brought help. Just stay still a little longer. The frantic burrowing stopped. The colony subsided. Thornscale's heart rate stabilized. Raymond realized he had been holding his breath and forced himself to exhale. That was too close. Medical nanites, Raymond called. Lucy deployed a swarm of microscopic robots into Thornscale's bloodstream through the cleared section of tail. Their job was to keep his organs functioning, to stimulate his heart just enough to maintain circulation without bringing him fully conscious. It was a delicate balance. Too much stimulation and he would wake. Too little and his body would shut down completely. They worked through the day and into the night. Section by section, the colony transferred from dragon flesh to artificial substrate. As each area cleared, they saw Thornscale's true scales beneath. Bronze with veins of gold marked with scars that told stories of a long life. Some dragons watching from the cavern entrance wept openly. They had thought they would never see these colors again. 12 hours into the procedure, they reached Thornscale's torso. This was more complex. The barnacles had grown deeper here, interfacing with major organs and blood vessels. Raymond worked with steady hands, but he could feel exhaustion pulling at his concentration. Lucy looked dead on her feet. The dragon volunteers were beginning to make small mistakes, their claws trembling with fatigue. "We need to rest," Silverwing said quietly. "Before someone makes an error we cannot undo." "We don't have time," Raymond argued. "We're barely halfway through and we have less than 12 hours remaining. You'll kill him if you continue like this. Humans need sleep, so do dragons. Take 4 hours. I will ensure the colony remains stable." Raymond wanted to argue, but Lucy put a hand on his arm. "He's right. We're making mistakes. I almost severed a major connection 5 minutes ago." They rested in shifts, some sleeping while others monitored Thornscale's vital signs. Ashara refused to leave, but Raymond convinced her to at least lie down beside her father. She was asleep within seconds, her body finally overriding her determination. 4 hours later, Raymond woke to alarms. Thornscale's heart had slowed to 1 beat per minute. They were running out of time. He splashed cold water on his face and returned to work. No more breaks. They had to finish this now. The next 6 hours blurred together. Transfer, monitor, adjust. Transfer, monitor, adjust. Raymond's hands moved on autopilot, his mind focused on the delicate dance of keeping both colony and dragon alive. The cavern filled with the sound of the resonance device, a constant song of communication between species that had no right to understand each other, but somehow did. They reached Thornscale's neck. The neural clusters were close now, pulsing with concentrated intelligence. The colony knew they were approaching the critical moment. Fear rippled through the light patterns. "Almost there," Raymond whispered, as much to himself as to the colony. "Just hold together a little longer." Then they reached the head. 7 neural clusters arranged around Thornscale's skull like a crown. This was it, the moment everything either worked or failed catastrophically. Raymond looked at Lucy, at the dragon volunteers, at Ashara, who had woken and pressed herself against her father's side. "Everyone ready?" Raymond asked. "We do this simultaneously. All 7 clusters transfer at once, maintaining perfect connection between old substrate and new. On my mark," he counted down from 3. On 0, 7 pairs of hands moved in perfect coordination. The neural clusters lifted from Thornscale's scales and settled onto silicon gel matrices. For 3 terrible seconds, the colony went completely dark. No light, no resonance, nothing. Ashara cried out, a sound of pure anguish. Silverwing stepped forward, preparing to seal the cavern as promised. Raymond refused to believe they had failed. Then light blazed through the gel matrices. The colony lived. More than lived. It sang with joy, its bioluminescence painting the cavern in colors that had no names. The 7 neural clusters had reconnected. The colony was whole. And finally, on a substrate it could actually bond with. And beneath the crumbling stone shell, Thornscale drew a full breath for the first time in months. His scales shimmered, his claws flexed, his eyes remained closed, but his heart beat strong and steady, once every 10 seconds, then once every 7, faster, stronger, healing. Raymond collapsed to his knees, exhaustion and relief overwhelming him. Lucy laughed through tears. Dragon volunteers embraced each other in their traditional way, intertwining necks and humming victory songs. Ashara pressed her face against her father's, feeling his warmth, his breath, his returning strength. "Wake up," she whispered. "Please wake up. I want you to meet the ones who saved us." Thornscale's eyes opened slowly, focusing on his daughter's face. On the humans who had refused to give up. On the colony now pulsing with grateful light in its new home. He tried to speak, but his voice was raw from months of disuse. Raymond smiled. "Rest, you're safe now. Everyone is safe." Outside, dawn broke over Scorched Haven. Inside the cavern, 2 species that should have died learned to live again. And between them all, humans proved once more that impossible just meant nobody had tried hard enough yet. Thornscale took his first steps in months like a hatchling learning to walk. His muscles had atrophied during the long stasis, and even with medical nanites accelerating healing, recovery would take time. He did not seem to care. He was alive, free from the stone prison, and his daughter pressed against his side with such fierce joy that Scales could not contain it. Raymond watched from across the cavern, finishing the last of his medical scans. Thornscale's vital signs were stabilizing rapidly. The dragon would make a full recovery. Behind Raymond, The Barnacle colony pulsed with steady light in its silicon gel matrices. It was alive too, finally on substrate it could actually use. 2 victories instead of 1 tragedy. That was better than most days offered. You did something impossible, human, Silverwing said, approaching on silent claws. The elder dragon had been watching the recovery with an expression Raymond could not quite read. The council said Thornscale was lost. The healers from 4 worlds declared him unsavable. Yet here he stands. We got lucky, Raymond said, deflecting praise as he always did. The colony was intelligent enough to cooperate. That made the difference. Luck, Silverwing repeated, tasting the word. Is that what humans call it when they refuse to accept defeat? When they see a problem everyone else considers hopeless and decide to solve it anyway? If so, you have more luck than any species I have met. Lucy joined them, carrying data tablets full of analysis. The colony is doing better than expected. It's already starting to adapt to the gel substrate, modifying the molecular structure to better suit its needs. In a few weeks it might be self-sufficient. What happens to it then? Silverwing asked. We cannot keep a silicon-based organism in our world. It does not belong here. Actually, Lucy said, pulling up geological surveys, we might have a solution for that. Your planet has a region called the Glass Desert. Ancient volcanic flows created vast crystal formations. The area is barren to carbon-based life, but for silicon-based organisms it could be paradise. She showed them images of the desert, crystalline structures stretching for hundreds of miles, catching sunlight and refracting it into rainbow patterns. It was beautiful and utterly lifeless. Lucy explained her idea. With human terraforming assistance, they could modify the desert to support the colony, give it a permanent home where it could grow without threatening anyone. Silverwing studied the images. That region is sacred to us. Where dragons go to die, to return their bodies to the stone. You ask us to share it with alien organisms. I'm asking you to save them, Raymond said. Just like we saved Thornscale. They're victims, too. They didn't choose to be incompatible with this world. They're refugees from a dead civilization, trying to survive the only way they know how. The elder dragon was quiet for a long time. Finally he spoke. You see things differently than we do. Where we see threat, you see victim. Where we see impossible problem, you see solvable puzzle. Perhaps this is why your species survives despite being so fragile. You refuse to accept the easy answer when a better one exists. Will you help them? Raymond asked. Yes, Silverwing said. The Glass Desert will become a sanctuary. We will help transport the colony and establish it there. It is the least we can do to honor what you have done for us. Across the cavern, Thornscale approached on unsteady legs. Up close he was massive, his head alone larger than Raymond's entire body. Bronze scales caught the light and eyes that had seen centuries focused on the small human who had saved his life. You are Raymond Cole, Thornscale said, his voice like thunder in enclosed spaces. My daughter crossed star systems to find you. She said humans do not give up even when all others would. I understand now what she meant. He lowered his head to Raymond's level, a gesture of respect that made several watching dragons gasp. In dragon culture, lowering one's head to another species was nearly unthinkable. It showed equality or even submission. Thornscale did not seem to care about tradition. I owe you a debt that can never be repaid, Thornscale said. You saved my life. You saved the colony that accidentally harmed me. You showed mercy to something that was slowly killing me. This is not strength as dragons understand it, but it is strength nonetheless. How can I honor this debt? Raymond glanced at Lucy, who shrugged. They had not done this expecting payment. Seeing Thornscale alive and the colony safe was reward enough, but dragon culture placed enormous weight on debts and obligations. Refusing the offer might cause offense. There is one thing, Raymond said carefully. The galaxy sees humans as dangerous, aggressive. They tolerate us because we have useful technology, but they don't trust us. Your people could change that perception. An alliance between dragons and humans based on mutual respect instead of mutual fear could show other species that humanity is capable of more than violence. Thornscale raised his head, his eyes bright with understanding. You do not want wealth or power. You want acceptance, recognition that your kind is worthy of trust. He turned to Silverwing. I propose a formal alliance. Not a treaty of convenience, but true partnership. Dragons and humans working together, our strength and their ingenuity combined. Silverwing considered this. Around the cavern, other dragons whispered among themselves. This was unprecedented. Dragons allied with no one. They stood alone, relying on their own power. But they had learned something watching humans work. Alone, Thornscale would have died. Together, everyone lived. "I will bring this to the council," Silverwing said, "but I believe they will agree. You have earned this, humans. Not through conquest or threat, but through compassion. That is a rarity in the galaxy." Thornscale did something else unexpected. He pulled a scale from his chest directly over his heart. It came away with a soft sound, leaving a gap that would take months to fill. He offered it to Raymond. The scale was larger than Raymond's hand, gleaming with inner light. "In dragon culture," Thornscale explained, "we give scales only to family and those who have saved our lives. This scale is my promise. If humanity ever needs dragons, show this scale. We will come. No questions, no hesitation. This is a debt that passes through generations. My descendants will honor it long after I return to stone." Ashara stepped forward and pulled one of her own scales, though she had far fewer due to her genetic condition. "And my promise too. You gave me back my father. You believed me when no one else would. You tried when everyone else said it was hopeless. I will not forget." Raymond accepted both scales with reverence. They were warm, still carrying heat from the dragons who wore them. He understood the weight of what he was being given. Not just personal promises, but species-level alliances forged in desperation and trust. "Thank you," Raymond said simply, because sometimes simple words carried the most meaning. Commander Reeves arrived with transport schedules and formal documentation. The colony needed to be moved to the glass desert. Equipment needed to be packed, official reports needed to be filed. The practical concerns of an impossible success. But she stopped when she saw the scales in Raymond's hands. "Those are going to change everything," Reeves said quietly. "When other species learn dragons gave humans their scales, when they understand what that means, humanity's entire position in galactic politics shifts. We're not just tolerated anymore. We're trusted. That was never the goal," Raymond protested. "I know," Reeves smiled. "That's why it worked. You weren't trying to prove anything to anyone. You were just trying to save lives. Turns out that's more impressive than any military victory could ever be." The next few days passed in a blur of activity. The colony was transported to the glass desert with careful ceremony. When they placed it on natural crystal formations, the change was immediate. The colony spread, connected with the stone, and began to sing. Not the distressed song Ashara had heard before, but something joyful, the sound of an organism finally finding home. Within hours, the colony started terraforming its environment, converting inert crystal into living structures, growing new formations that bent light in impossible ways, creating art and architecture without conscious thought, just following biological imperatives that happened to produce beauty. Lucy studied the process with wonder. It's not just surviving. It's creating an entire ecosystem. Give it a few years and this desert will be alive in ways we can't even imagine. Dragons and humans worked together, establishing monitoring stations and research facilities. The young dragons who had volunteered during the extraction procedure now asked Lucy and Raymond endless questions about human science. Several human medics expressed interest in learning dragon healing techniques. Cultural exchange was happening naturally, without formal programs or forced interaction. Thornscale recovered his strength day by day. He flew with Ashara over the singing cliffs, teaching her aerial techniques he had thought he would never share. She navigated by sound and heat, and he learned to trust her perception even though it was so different from his own sight. They were learning to see the world through each other's eyes, or ears in Ashara's case. On their last evening on Scorched Haven, Raymond stood at the edge of the glass desert watching sunset paint the crystalline formations in colors that defied description. The colony pulsed with gentle light below, singing its crystalline song to the stars above. Somewhere behind him, dragons and humans shared food and stories around campfires. Thornscale landed beside Raymond with surprising gentleness for such a large creature. "You're leaving tomorrow?" "Yes," Raymond confirmed. "Back to Tidewatch Station. We have other work waiting." "Other impossible problems to solve?" "Something like that." Thornscale was quiet for a moment, watching his world transform in ways he had never imagined possible. "Ashara wants to visit your station. She wants to learn human methods, human perspectives. I find I cannot deny her. She crossed the galaxy once to save me. I can hardly forbid her from crossing it again to learn." "She's always welcome," Raymond said. "We could use someone who experiences the universe the way she does. Different perspectives solve problems sight alone cannot." That is wisdom dragons should have understood long ago, Thornscale admitted. We prided ourselves on standing alone, needing no one. It nearly cost me everything. Perhaps it is time we learned that strength and cooperation are not opposites. Raymond smiled. Humans learned that the hard way too. Almost destroyed ourselves before figuring it out. But we did figure it out eventually. Better late than never. They stood together in companionable silence, watching the birth of something new. A silicon-based ecosystem that would grow and thrive. An alliance between species that had no reason to trust each other, except that they had worked together and succeeded. Hope built on shared effort instead of shared enemies. Tomorrow Raymond would return to his research. But tonight he watched beauty emerge from disaster and knew that sometimes the impossible just needed someone willing to try. 3 months passed like water through fingers. Raymond returned to his routine of analyzing samples and filing reports, but everything felt different now. The scales from Thornscale and Ashera hung in his laboratory, mounted in a place of honor where they caught light and reminded him that sometimes the impossible was just the difficult waiting to be solved. News of the dragon rescue had spread across civilized space faster than light speed. Communications could carry it. Requests flooded in from species Raymond had never heard of, asking for human consultation on problems their own experts had declared unsolvable. A silicon-based organism threatening a mining colony, a carbon-based species trapped in incompatible hibernation, parasitic infestations, biological incompatibilities, ecological disasters that needed solutions beyond traditional thinking. We're becoming the galaxy's emergency problem solvers, Lucy observed, sorting through the latest batch of requests. Half these situations sound impossible. Good, Raymond said. We're good at impossible. Commander Reeves had been promoted twice in 3 months. Human standing in galactic politics had shifted dramatically, not through military demonstrations or economic pressure, but because a blind dragon had asked for help and humans had refused to give up. Other species were reconsidering their assumptions about humanity. Maybe these Deathworlders were not just dangerous. Maybe they were useful. The door to Raymond's laboratory opened without warning. Ashara entered, folding her wings carefully to fit through the doorway designed for creatures much smaller than dragons. She had visited twice since the rescue, spending weeks at a time learning human research methods and teaching humans about echolocation perception. She navigated the cluttered laboratory with perfect confidence despite never having seen it with eyes. You're early, Raymond said, surprised. I wasn't expecting you until next week. The glass desert has started producing spores, Ashara explained, her excitement clear even through the translator. The colony is reproducing, creating seeds that could potentially establish new silicon-based ecosystems on other worlds. Your scientists should see this. Lucy was already pulling up data feeds from the monitoring stations on Scorched Haven. The information was extraordinary. The colony had not just adapted to the glass desert. It had thrived, growing and evolving at speeds that defied their projections. What they thought would take years had taken months. The colony was not content to simply survive. It was expanding, creating, transforming. How is your father? Raymond asked. Stronger every day, Ashara said, and there was deep contentment in her voice. He says he feels younger than he has in centuries. The long stasis forced his body to heal old injuries he'd forgotten about. He jokes that I should cover him in barnacles more often. That's terrible dragon humor, Lucy said, grinning. Humans have no room to criticize anyone's humor, Ashara replied, but her tone was warm. She had learned to banter with humans, to understand the teasing that built friendships instead of causing offense. A priority message interrupted their conversation. Commander Reeves appeared on the communication screen, her expression serious. Cole, we have a situation. There's been contact from a species called the Viridian Collective. They're requesting human assistance with what they describe as a catastrophic biological crisis. Details are classified, but they specifically asked for you and your team. Why specifically us? Raymond asked. Because you saved a dragon and a colony everyone else declared dead. They think if anyone can help them, it's the humans who don't know when to quit. Raymond looked at Lucy, then at Ashara. What do you think? I think impossible problems are what you do best, Ashara said. And I think I should come with you. You might need someone who sees the world differently than you do. Absolutely not, Commander Reeves said immediately. This is a human operation. We can't risk dragon involvement complicating diplomatic situations. With respect, Commander, Ashara said, her voice taking on the formal tone dragons used when they were about to ignore authority. I am not asking permission. Raymond and Lucy saved my father by refusing to accept conventional wisdom. They succeeded because they welcomed different perspectives. I offer that perspective. Besides, the alliance between our species means we should work together on exactly these kinds of missions. Reeves looked like she wanted to argue, but Raymond could see her calculating the political implications. Dragon cooperation was unprecedented. Having Ashara voluntarily join a human mission would strengthen the alliance in ways no treaty could. Fine, Reeves said. But this sets a precedent. We're officially entering an era of mixed species operations. The paperwork alone will be nightmarish. Better nightmarish paperwork than dead civilians, Raymond said. Send us the mission details. We'll leave as soon as we're ready. After Reeves disconnected, Lucy pulled up what limited information they had on the Viridian Collective, a reclusive species that rarely interacted with other civilizations. The fact that they were asking for help at all suggested desperation. Could be anything, Lucy said. Pandemic, ecological collapse, technological disaster. We won't know until we arrive. Then we prepare for everything, Raymond replied. He started pulling equipment from storage, the familiar routine of preparing for the unknown. Medical scanners, communication devices, sample collectors, analysis tools. The kit of someone who walked into disasters and tried to build solutions from whatever materials existed. Ashara watched him work with her head tilted in her characteristic listening posture. You're nervous. Always am before a mission, Raymond admitted. What if this time we can't find an answer? What if the problem really is unsolvable? Then you'll try anyway, Ashara said with complete confidence. That's what makes you human. You don't calculate probability of success before deciding to help. You help first and figure out success afterward. That sounds dangerously close to stupidity, Lucy observed. The line between courage and stupidity is often a matter of whether you succeed, Ashara said. But I've watched humans enough to know that trying and failing is not the same as never trying at all. You'll figure something out. You always do, Raymond hoped she was right. He packed the last of the equipment and sealed the cases. Another impossible problem waited somewhere in the galaxy. Another species that had exhausted all conventional options and turned to humans in desperation. No pressure. But as he looked at the scales hanging in his laboratory, he remembered Thornscale encased in stone, declared unsavable by every expert who examined him. He remembered the Barnacle colony trapped in dying symbiosis, considered an enemy to be destroyed rather than a victim to be saved. He remembered Ashara crossing star systems on nothing but hope, and the belief that humans might try when no one else would. They had saved everyone. Not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through refusing to accept that anyone had to die, through seeing problems from different angles until a solution emerged, through cooperation between species that should have had nothing in common. Maybe that was humanity's real strength. Not the ability to survive harsh death worlds or build impressive technology, but the stubborn, perhaps foolish refusal to give up on anyone or anything while options still existed. The transport arrived to carry them to the Viridian Collective's territory. Raymond, Lucy, and Ashara boarded together, an interspecies team heading toward another catastrophe that needed solving. The galaxy was full of such catastrophes, problems declared impossible, situations where every expert had given up. Good thing humans specialized in the impossible, and even better that they no longer worked alone. Dragons brought strength and perspective. Humans brought ingenuity and determination. The Barnacle colony, thriving in its glass desert home, had taught them all that life existed in forms beyond conventional understanding. Together they made a team that could tackle problems none could solve individually. The transport lifted off from Tidewatch Station, accelerating toward whatever crisis awaited. Raymond settled into his seat and pulled up preliminary data on the Viridian Collective. Lucy prepared equipment manifests. Ashara hummed softly to herself, using echolocation to map the transport's interior dimensions. Somewhere ahead, people needed help. That was all Raymond needed to know. The details could wait. The impossibility of the situation did not matter. Someone had asked for help, and humans did not know how to say no to that request. He smiled and closed his eyes, resting before the chaos began. Impossible problems made the best stories. They also made the best reasons to keep trying. The galaxy was full of species with superior technology, greater strength, longer lifespans and more advanced civilizations. But humanity was carving out its place not through conquest or domination, but through something simpler and somehow more powerful. They cared. They tried. They refused to accept that anyone was beyond saving. In the end, maybe that was enough. Maybe that was more than enough. Maybe that was everything that mattered. The transport jumped to faster-than-light travel, carrying an impossible team toward an impossible problem. Behind them, Scorched Haven's glass desert sang with silicon life that should not exist. Thornscale flew with his daughter, both alive when they should be dead. The Barnacle colony created beauty from what had been barren wasteland, proof that impossible was just another word for not yet accomplished. Raymond opened his eyes and got back to work. Problems did not solve themselves, but with enough perspective, enough determination, and enough willingness to see things differently, most problems could be solved. The rest just needed more time, and humans, as the galaxy was learning, had plenty of time. They were patient when they needed to be, stubborn when patience failed, clever when stubbornness was not enough, and always willing to try one more approach when every other species had given up. The mission details appeared on his screen. The Viridian crisis was indeed catastrophic. The situation looked genuinely impossible. Raymond read through the data twice, absorbing details, looking for patterns. "Well?" Lucy asked. "Can we do anything?" "Don't know yet," Raymond admitted honestly. "But we're going to try. That has to count for something." Ashara's laughter echoed through the transport, a sound like bells made of stone. "You humans. You see an impossible problem and your first response is, let's try anyway. No wonder my father likes you." "Is that a compliment?" Lucy asked. "From a dragon?" Ashara said. "That's the highest compliment there is." The transport hurtled through the spaces between stars, carrying hope in the form of a stubborn human biologist, his equally stubborn assistant, and a blind dragon who had learned that sometimes not seeing clearly meant seeing more than anyone else. Together they would face whatever waited at their destination. Together they would try to save whoever needed saving. Because that was what they did. That was what defined them. Not their species, not their differences, but their shared refusal to give up while any chance of success remained. The universe was vast and full of dangers, but it was also full of humans willing to face those dangers for no better reason than someone asked for help. That had to mean something. Raymond believed it meant everything. Outside the viewport, stars streaked past in patterns that were almost like dragon scales catching light. Almost like crystal singing to itself in the dark. Almost like hope taking physical form and stretching across the galaxy. Almost, but not quite. Reality was always stranger and more wonderful than metaphor could capture. Raymond understood that now. He had learned it from dragons and barnacles, from impossible rescues and unlikely alliances. The universe was not about humans standing alone against the darkness. It was about everyone standing together, combining strengths, sharing perspectives, building solutions that no single species could achieve alone. And if that was not impossible enough, nothing was. Raymond smiled and prepared for landing. Another day, another catastrophe, another chance to prove that giving up was never an option. The galaxy was learning that lesson slowly, but it was learning. And humans? Humans were teaching it one impossible success at a time.